Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor for the 81st legislative session. Before we begin, please be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking to minimize the background noise. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Hardy?
Here.
Senator Lang?
Sorry, here.
Senator Neal?
Here.
Senator Pickard?
Here.
Senator Scheibel?
Here.
Senator Settlemyre?
Here.
Chair Spearman?
Here. Thank you. Let the record show that we have all of our members present and accounted for. So welcome to our audience joining us remotely and anyone else listening over the internet. Today, we will have a hearing on Senate Bill 122. I would like to take a moment to go over some basic housekeeping items. As you know, the legislative building is currently closed as a public safety measure to reduce the spread and infection rate of COVID-19 to the public. And so all committee meetings will be held virtually, meaning committee members, staff, and everyone else will participate either through Zoom, video conference, or by telephone. However, there are various ways members of the public can engage with us and participate throughout the process. These include registering to participate in a committee meeting through the new system of Nellis, submitting written comment to the committee email address or fax listed on the agenda. You may share your opinion via the legislative opinion application on Nellis, or by viewing committee meetings online through Nellis or on 21 legislative session to testify on a bill or provide public comment. Members of the public must first register for the meeting you would like to participate in. On Nellis, simply click the participate button near the committee meeting and date and time, then fill in the required information such as your name, the agenda item you're interested in, and your position on the bill. Once your registration is submitted, you will see a confirmation screen and I can speak this morning, and you will also receive an email with the phone numbers and meeting ID to call in at the time of the meeting. Just to note that while meeting registration is required to participate, it does not guarantee you will be able to speak. Similarly to previous sessions, comment and public comment may be limited due to time constraints. And I will announce the time frame, how many minutes for each response, for, against, or neutral. It will be helpful if more than one person in an organization wishes to comment to remember that ditto is a good response if someone has already covered the points you want to make. And this will allow more people to comment during that time frame. When you're on the phone line, please pay attention to which bill is being considered and follow the verbal prompts provided by the BPS staff so that you know which keys to press to raise your hand or unmute yourself. Staff will call on you to speak by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Detailed instructions for participating in committee meetings are also available on the help page, which is linked in the banner at the top of every page on Nellis. If you need assistance with any of these processes, or if you would like to receive electronic notification of the committee's agenda and minutes, please contact our committee manager at the committee email listed on the agenda. Any exhibits for the committee must be submitted in electronic format no later than 8 a.m. the day before the meeting to our committee staff. And then you must contact information, and it can be found on the page of Nellis. In addition, any person proposing an amendment to a bill being heard by the committee must first talk to the sponsor and let them know you intend to submit an amendment. I will not entertain any amendments if the bill sponsor is not aware of that amendment. The proposed amendment must be submitted in writing 24 hours prior to the meeting. Please include the bill number, a statement of intent, and your contact information. When testifying, please remember to unmute your microphone and clearly state your name and entity you represent at the beginning of your testimony. Speak clearly and project your voice to ensure those watching remotely can hear your testimony. Please remember to turn the microphone off when you finish speaking. A reminder to all those who testified, pursuant to Nevada Revised Statutes 218E.085, it is unlawful for a person to knowingly misrepresent facts when testifying before a legislative committee. A person who knowingly does so is guilty of a misdemeanor. The chair and members may request any testifier to submit documentation supporting their testimony. To committee members, during these virtual meetings, when an agenda item is called for a vote, our committee will be using the roll call. When the committee secretary calls your name, please answer with a yes or no so that there is no confusion. Also, if you have a question, please raise your hand through the Zoom application. And finally, all exhibits received prior to the meeting will be available on Nellis Online. And so now I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 122. SB 122 requires certain health and safety training for employees of cannabis establishments. Senator Brooks, you and your team may proceed when you're ready. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Spearman, Vice Chair Neal, and members of the Commerce and Labor Committee. My name is Chris Brooks from Senate District 3 down in Clark County. And this morning I'm here to present Senate Bill 122. Senate Bill 122 will require a cannabis business to have employees complete a 10-hour Osha course and supervisors complete a 30-hour Osha course within 1 year of employment to ensure that employees and supervisors are familiar with common job-related safety and health standards. In Nevada, cannabis industry includes retail workers who handle cannabis products, workers who work in and around heavy machinery and the manufacturing and cultivation of cannabis products, and workers in testing laboratories that are exposed to cannabis byproducts and chemicals. This will bring worker protections for those workers up to date with other industries in Nevada. That is why I've introduced this bill. If it pleases the committee, I would like to hand it off to Jessica Ferrato from Crowley and Ferrato Public Affairs to explain the importance of this bill and also walk through some of its provisions.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jessica Ferrato with Crowley and Ferrato Public Affairs, here today on behalf of the United Food and Commercial Workers to help present SB 122. As Senator Brooks mentioned, SB 122 will require OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 training for employees of the cannabis industry. The goal of the bill is to familiarize employees and supervisors with common job-related safety and health standards. Hazards within the industry include heat exposure, pesticide exposure, field sanitation issues, carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide exposure, handling of equipment that rotates, cuts, and pinches, and exposure to flammable chemicals. Providing this training will increase workforce safety for the industry as a whole. I'll now take a minute to walk you through the bill. Existing law requires certain employees performing work on construction sites, certain sites related to the entertainment industry, and sites where exhibitions, conventions, and trade shows occur to complete OSHA 10 and 30 training. This bill enacts similar requirements for employees of the cannabis establishments. Section 2 through 7 of the bill provide necessary definitions. Section 8 allows the Division of Industrial Relations to adopt any necessary regulations. Section 9 requires the division to approve OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 courses. Section 10 requires OSHA trainers to identify their approved card at the location of the training. Section 11 requires an employee to complete an OSHA 10 class and a supervisory employee to complete OSHA 30 classes within 1 year of employment. In addition, it specifies the costs of the training will be paid by the employer. Section 12 states that employees who do not complete the course within 1 year shall be suspended or terminated by their employer. Section 13 requires the division to report any violation of a cannabis establishment that does not follow Section 12 of the bill to the Executive Director of the Cannabis Compliance Board. And lastly, Section 15 requires a suspension of a licensee for violations of Section 12. This bill will provide a standard of safety to the cannabis industry and bring worker safety up to date with other industries in the state. Thank you for your time, and I'm here to help answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ferraro. Senator Brooks, do you have anyone else that you would like to testify before we go into opposition?
Chair, I do not, but I do believe that on the phone line, registered in the neutral position is Osha to answer a question if necessary, and the Cannabis Compliance Board as well.
And
Okay.
Senator Chair Spearman, there will be some folks on the line to testify in support. So I think we have support testimony on the phone. And then I know that Osha is with us in the Zoom here only to answer questions from the committee if needed.
Okay, thank you. And for those who are on the line and wanting to testify, please remember that ditto is a good response, especially if you have a number of people wanting to testify during that segment, okay? So thank you. Committee members, any questions? Senator Hardy?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think you're muted. Senator Hardy?
I'm
Oh, there we go. Okay, can hear you now.
Yeah, what workman comp injuries have we had so far in the industry that's been around for a while now? So in other words, what specific things are we looking for in our 10 and our 30 OSHA training?
Senator Hardy, this is Senator Brooks for record. I do not have the information on what claims have been made to date in this industry. I don't know if Mr. Otto does or not.
Senator Hardy, through you, Chair. There are a variety
Go direct. Go direct.
Okay, great.
Go direct.
Senator Hardy, thanks for the question. There are a variety of exposures that are being encountered in the industry. I can provide some anecdotal stories from workers in terms of what they're exposed to. I will just highlight, that there's a variety of things that are covered under OSHA 10 and OSHA 30, specifically basic workplace safety things like fire prevention, exposure to chemicals, floor safety hazards, all these types of issues, as well as protection of your musculoskeletal disorders from rotating and items like that. So there are day-to-day work exposures, not just in the retail cultivation industries, but also in manufacturing that workers are exposed to on a daily basis. I can find out information to you in terms of those types of claims, though.
I appreciate it. So I'm focused on the retail part of that, obviously, but then you mentioned the carbon dioxide exposure. So I'm wondering, I guess I'm a babe in the woods and not sure how, what chemicals are used and what they aren't. So I guess maybe should I take an OSHA 10 or an OSHA 30 in order to know what the things are? And I don't know how big the industry is. So are we talking about 4 people that have been workman's comp in the whole industry, or, what is our, how big a problem has it been in the last year or 2 years? And, what is it that we're seeing as far as problems in the industry? I guess I'm coming at it from a medical standpoint.
Sure. Thanks, Senator Hardy. A couple of things that you sort of had through that question. As far as just referencing carbon dioxide and carbon dioxide results from air enrichment procedures that are used during dry ice or tanks of compressed carbon dioxide frequently to accelerate the improvement of plant growth. So that's the exposure there that's happening in the industry. And from my perspective, and also from the workers' perspective, this is a relatively new industry that has a lot of exposure into a lot of the items I previously named with pesticides and others. And so I think this is providing a foundation for workers and supervisors in the state to have just a baseline safety requirement that is very common in parallel industries, right? We see it in construction, we see it in entertainment, stage workers, and others. And as far as which course to take, OSHA 10 will be for employees, OSHA 30 obviously for the supervisors. And I can provide a follow-up list for you in terms of the retail establishments to talk about all of the items that are that the retail industry is exposed to, which are very typical to sort of workplace exposures. And I have a list of it and can provide that to you, including things like bloodborne pathogens, especially during COVID. As you can imagine, we have people coming in and out of a retail establishment. The workers need to know how to properly protect themselves as well as their customers. Just things like basic electrical use, cords and others, material handling. This industry is a relatively secure industry as well. So fire protection, especially with security operations, how that works. These are all sort of base level things that would be covered in an OSHA 10 course and would provide sort of this baseline education to members of the industry.
So retail, for instance, if I go to Macy's or some retail institution, or if somebody goes to a liquor store, or somebody goes to a 7-Eleven or a mini mart of some kind, do those people have to have OSHA training as well? That OSHA 10 training?
Senator Hardy, I can't speak to those industries and the requirements they have in place. I'm not familiar, but I think that from our perspective, this industry in particular has movement of product in and out of the industry, as well as being very vertically integrated companies. So there are employees that are moving between retail, manufacturing, cultivation within one company. And so they're exposed to things, especially chemicals and other processing products, as well as I mentioned, like these basic workplace safety items. So I can't speak to other industries, but I can provide you a list of what specifically these retail employees are exposed to.
Well, I appreciate that vertical integration that you're talking about. So thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure, thank you. And I believe I saw Senator Pickett's hand, and then Senator Hardy, and then Senator Settlemyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Because I don't know if the Dispensary Association is going to come up in opposition because they proposed some amendments. But I think you just answered one of my questions, which is my understanding is this bill is going to institute the requirement across all of the different segments of the industry, from manufacturing to distribution to the dispensaries themselves. My understanding of the OSHA 10, of course, I went through the construction, which is a specific subset, but the general industry OSHA 10 is that these are basic exposures to any industry, not industry specific. And as I understand it, these are going to be, this requirement is for the general industry. Are there specific industry, as Ms. Ferrato just mentioned, are there specific industry exposures and risks that are going to be added to these requirements? In other words, are we going to ultimately develop a industry specific? Because it sounds like many of the risks that were just described are industry specific and may not be covered by the OSHA 10 general industry. How do we reconcile that?
Thank you, Senator Pickard. Yes, for the record, just to be clear on this item, it is with the intention of the bill to provide the general OSHA training courses, not a cannabis specific one. And so this is really sort of a first step to move in a direction to provide sort of a level playing field and basic foundation. I think that as it pertains to the retail establishments, a lot of these items are basic workplace safety things that we just want to make sure those workers are provided. It's not the intention to provide something specific to the cannabis industry, but I know that many employers will provide examples on work site about the specific cannabis risks and hazards. And so we will depend on the industry folks as well as industry supervisors to make sure that their employees are properly trained with examples from the industry. But the intention of this bill is to provide that general OSHA training and to just start with some level of protection for workers and some level of standard across the industry.
All right, I appreciate that. And Madam Chair, if I can follow up.
Yeah, just before you do that, I think you asked that question with some specificity. So if OSHA is on the line, perhaps they may be able to elaborate.
That's actually where I was going. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Victoria Gagnon for the record. I'm the administrator at the Division of Industrial Relations. So in answer to that question, as was stated by Ms. Ferrato, yes, that general industry training is general, not specific to the cannabis industry. The cannabis industry would continue to be responsible for providing specific training on the specific hazards that employees are experiencing, as well as providing any training and PPE that may be necessary.
All right, and I appreciate that. My follow-up then is to you, if I may. And that is if we're not, and it's been a couple of years since I've taken the OSHA training, although I did go through both the 10 and the 30. My understanding of the requirements is that the OSHA training requires specific content, and we're not really allowed. We can mention other exposures, other issues, but the curriculum is set, and the tests only cover what's in that curriculum. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, Victoria Carrion, for the record. So the answer is yes, there are specific topics that are required. So the mandatory topics for the OSHA 10 class are an introduction to OSHA, walking and working surfaces, including fall protection, exit routes, emergency action plans, electrical, personal protective equipment, and hazard communication. And then there's electives that are for the remaining 2 hours, which include things like hazardous materials, materials handling, introduction to industrial hygiene, the bloodborne pathogens, ergonomics, fall protection. So there's a variety of topics. Some of them are mandatory, some of them are electives, but it comprises the whole 10 hours. And then the 30-hour training is very similar, just includes a lot of the managerial aspects as well.
All right, thank you for that. And do you know if the regulatory board, the cannabis board, is considering regulations regarding the industry-specific training or protections that are required?
Senator Pickard, Jessica Ferrato, for the record again. We have the Cannabis Compliance Board, I think, on the line to testify, I think, is neutral. There's nothing in this bill that would require anything of that sort of them. But I won't speak. I won't put words in their mouth.
All right, maybe we can get them to weigh in. I thought there was a requirement for the board to adopt regulations consistent with, but in any event, I'd love to hear their response.
Just a quick response there, Jessica Ferrato, for the record, Senator Pickard. This bill does allow OSHA to do regulations as needed to comply with the bill. So that's probably the item that you're thinking about. That's specific to OSHA.
All right, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Settlemeyer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just curious, when this bill came up a long time ago for the construction industry, all those individuals, basically the majority of them were employed full-time with that industry. I know a couple individuals that work within the cannabis establishments, and in that respect, they're not full-time employees necessarily. So this apply to everybody, even if they're just working 4 or 5 hours a week, or does this only apply to individuals that are working a 40-hour week, or how is that determination made? And also, are they having everyone go through the same course, even if the person that works there is just maybe doing delivery? Or I was just curious.
Thank you, Senator Settlemeyer. Jessica Ferrato, for the record. The intention of the bill is to cover all employees of cannabis establishments. We didn't differentiate between part-time and full-time workers. I'll take that back, though, and do a little research from a statutory standpoint in the language in the bill to see if it does specify. So I think from our perspective, if you're an employee of a cannabis establishment, it would be required that you would get an OSHA 10 course.
And
Thank you.
Settlemeyer, excuse me. I know in the construction industry, some of those folks come and go, and some of those are part-time, and some of them are just delivering materials. and all of them are getting the OSHA 10, and regardless of that status. So we're trying to create some parity to industries such as that within this industry.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Vice Chair Neal. Question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Spearman. So I just had a quick question. The bill's interesting. I had a chance to really think about it last night. But I guess what I wanted to know is like the status of the employees and how they function. And I'm glad that Senator Brooks brought up that some are part-time and some are full-time, because I know some people who've worked, they've switched several companies. And I was wondering, like, do they even have health care? I mean, we're talking about OSHA, and then you were talking about all of these chemicals and things that they're exposed to. But one of my nephews has done security for a company for over a year, and he doesn't even have health insurance. So we're talking about safety. And then I'm wondering, okay, if you're being exposed to all these chemicals and then you don't even have health care, but yet you're a full-time employee, right?
Senator Neal, Jessica Ferrato for the record. I know that I'm here speaking today on behalf of the workers, so I think that question is better suited for the employers in terms of what individual businesses and companies offer their employees. I can get you some information from our perspective in terms of what we see industry-wide for the workers, and I can follow up with that. But that question might be better suited for the employers.
So can I have a quick follow-up? Because if this is a nuanced piece where safety is then being required through this bill, right? If this bill passes, then we're saying that there's certain safety standards that will be in place that an employer will be responsible for. But how does it work in the workers' comp realm where these work-related injuries, if they had not been established through statutory provision, then what is the scale of the workers' comp injury that they can actually get relief for?
And Senator Neal, Senator Brooks for the record, this doesn't change the safety standards or that are required in a workplace. This doesn't change the coverage for workers' comp that is provided in a workplace. This just creates safety education for the workers in that workplace. And so what we're trying to do is avoid more workman's comp claims and try to avoid worker injuries in this industry. But this doesn't address the worker or safety standards in the workplace, which are covered in other statutes and other codes.
Okay. Because I was just super curious because, you know, workers' comp is pretty hard to prove. And I guess as this industry has grown up, I've never seen anything in statute that said if you're exposed to carbon dioxide in a cannabis facility, then here are the injuries that we are going to treat, and then you have a viable claim. Or if the individuals who are even functioning in the dispensary know that they have that right, or do they just go home sick and lay down for 12 hours and say, I think I'm good? I know I'm going on a tangent, but seriously, I'm like, I just don't think that there is that level of sophistication.
Good question.
Senator Neal, Senator Brooks for the record, your question about healthcare for the workforce and your question about, safety education for the workforce and hazards that are faced in the workplace, I think apply to many industries in our state. And this is why we're trying to take a look at an emerging industry in our state that, quite frankly, has a lot of people involved in it that don't have a lot of experience with maybe some of more other industrial operations or other things that are similar to this industry. And so this is a first step in at least educating the workforce on how they can have a safe work environment. And it also kind of creates a culture of safety within the organization. Once you introduce OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 into an organization, it really empowers the workforce themselves to really start thinking about safety in a whole different way. That's why I think it's such an important step.
Okay, thank you, Senator Brooks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair, you had a question that I think Ms. Ferraro said was better suited for the employees. I want to see if we have someone, employers, have anyone on the line representing cannabis industry that might be able to address her question now so we don't forget it. Again, is there anyone on the line representing the cannabis industry that might be able to address Vice Chair Neal's question? I believe it was on health insurance and compensation, workman's comp. Yes?
Stand by, Chair. I'm working on that right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
If there is currently anyone in the queue that can answer Senator Neal's question, can you please press *9 now to take your place in the queue? Caller with the last 3 digits of 184, please slowly spell and state your name for the record.
Hi, good morning, Senator Spearman. This is Matt Walker, MATTWALKER, on behalf of the Nevada Dispensary Association. We'll send the committee over a more comprehensive overview of the salary and benefits that are typical for the cannabis industry here in Nevada, but I did want to let you know that we, of course, comply with all the workman's comp requirements, and we also, the Nevada Dispensary Association offers a plan to its members through Core Prime that are available for employees, and certainly many businesses do take advantage of that.
Chair Neal, is that satisfactory?
I'll wait for the expansive letter.
Okay.
And we certainly appreciate that opportunity, Senator. Again, Matt Walker for the record.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may, while he's still on, if I could ask, what the cost for the process is for the 10 and the 30 and the individual regulations. Do they have some kind of idea what that is? If he's still on the line.
Sure, Senator Spearman. I apologize on the phone. It's hard to tell if I have the chair's consent to answer. But again, Matt Walker on behalf of the Nevada Dispensary Association for the record. And we would appreciate clarity on what OSHA training requirements will be required as part of this. I think as the proponents of the bill explain, this would be a general industry requirement, but there are still opportunities for regulations to be adopted by either the Cannabis Compliance Board or the or OSHA. And so we certainly want to have a very clear understanding if the consequence is the immediate termination of employees. We think we owe it to this over 6,000 employees from our members to have a real understanding of what's going to be required. Certainly general OSHA training is readily available. But again, as this may be customized through regulations, we certainly are concerned about the timelines and availability associated with those trainings.
I guess what I asked was, how much does it cost for the OSHA training then, just pure and simple?
Senator Chris Brooks for the record. Senator Hardy, OSHA 10 costs about $80, OSHA 30, $180. It's been my experience that, and then there are some free classes offered by OSHA through their SCATS program. And a lot of times what I've seen in my past experience is you'll get a large group of your employees together and do it all at once. And the employer will bear that cost if they have a in-house OSHA or an instructor that they brought in to instruct all their employees.
So it's 80 per person, not per group.
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you. Senator Pickett, is your hand up, or was that from the last time?
Yes, yes, Your Honor. Yes, Madam Chair. I just, while we've got, I don't know if this is appropriate though, because I assumed he was going to come up in opposition because they're recommending some amendments. But I'm wondering what the dispensaries currently do. I noticed that they've requested to exempt the dispensary workers, and it sounds like Ms. Verrado testified that we've got a lot of vertical integration that might kind of blur that. But I'm wondering why the association thinks that they should be exempted and what they're currently doing to train their employees, if he knows.
Chair Spearman, with your permission, this is Matt Walker on behalf of the Nevada Dispensary Association.
Hey, Matt, Matt, just go direct. Matt, just go direct. Everyone who's answering, just go direct, okay?
Thank you for the question, Senator Pickard. So I apologize. I was looking for some materials. So we are certainly thinking that it's appropriate for dispensary employees that only hold an agent card for dispensaries to be exempted from this requirement. Unlike California, where folks may be transitioning from facility to facility, absent that specific authorization from the state, in Nevada, we have a very secure system where folks have location-specific agent cards. So certainly, while it's maybe appropriate for a production facility employee with a production facility agent registration card to receive the OSHA specific training associated with their fellow employees at that facility, an employee who only is working in the retail setting and only has an agent registration card associated with that retail environment, we really feel like it's not appropriate for a state mandated workforce training for that employee.
But it's my understanding that in talking to members of the dispensaries themselves, in fact, my next door neighbor is one, he's an executive, they already do this training. And so, the specific training necessary for the dispensary. So I'm wondering, is that, I'd like to get some clarity on, is there a lot of overlap? Is it the same kind of training? Do they cover the same things? Ultimately, is the OSHA 10 training necessary if the dispensaries are already doing this? And if they are, why aren't we tasking the cannabis board? But anyway, that probably goes beyond the scope. So I'm not sure you can answer that, but I'd like to get some clarity on
Senator Pickard, Matt Walker for the record. I would say that we're also concerned that the costs associated with the paid hours, when we use that for workplace training, we want to make sure that it's directly applicable and the most efficient use of that time. And we certainly share some of the thoughts and concerns that you express. We strongly feel like that this could be dialed in to better account for the retail environment, and that, as you mentioned, many employers, because of reduction in insurance rates, or just because they feel like it's the right thing to do for their employees, are already doing mandatory trainings and awareness. And certainly the CCB has been at the forefront of making sure that that's a standard part of applications and applicant behavior going forward.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Neal, did you still have a question?
I just had a quick question, and I guess, this is for my education, right? I mean, I see the statutory changes, I see the dispensaries in my district, but I don't visit, right? I don't really get into the interaction of business, right? So when I was thinking about how the employers pay and how the employers will be paying per card, have we worked out that inter-transfer of money I know we, in 2019, we had, were trying to create a system where it was kind of like this debit card that would load money on, and then you'd be able to move money and transfer money. I mean, how does that work? Because that's intergovernmental transfer, I guess, of funds, because they're going to pay OSHA for the OSHA card, which is an industry card. And so how does that work? Can you just tell me how far we've progressed in terms of money transfers? That Ms. Sperato or Ms. Carrion?
Senator Neal, I think, again, this is, you're asking if how the employers are paying essentially bills currently based on the banking of the issues with the industry. Is that your question? Or how? I think that might be better suited for the industry, just because I represent the workers who aren't, making payments on behalf of the businesses, if that's what your question is. Can you clarify? Sorry.
Senator Neal, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. It's called the Zoom effect. I was saying that, I was just trying to get an understanding, get some education on that. If it's like $80 a card for, an OSHA 10 times like 2,000 people, then that transfer of money for those employees to take that is that on a debit card? How does this inter-transfer of marijuana money work in government transfers?
I'll start from the employee side, Senator Neal, and then maybe you have some additional questions for industry representatives. What I will say is that in many instances, and what we've done in some other states, as well as what I think the intention is here, is for them to get this training potentially on site. Many employer groups provide this training for their workers, as well as their opportunities through OSHA, as Senator Brooks mentioned, and programs at OSHA to get this training for free. So I think that it would be better suited for the industry to answer how they would plan to be paying for this, as the bill requires, the industry to pay for these fees. But I think that there are a lot of opportunities in the state, not only through OSHA, but through employer groups, to get this training for free and on site.
Okay. Well,
Mr. Walker, I'm sorry. I was going to ask if Mr. Walker's still on, if he can address this for the industry.
Sure. Chair Spearman, happy to do that. Senator Neal, thank you for the question. Matt Walker, for the record, on behalf of the Nevada Dispensary Association. While we still struggle with the access to banking under the current federal regulatory structures, all businesses have figured out a way to pay various vendors, although it does come at some additional costs that a typical business wouldn't have associated with the transfer of money. But whether it's an internal staff member who's been trained up to provide that training, or an external vendor, cannabis businesses would be able to make that happen. And this is a good opportunity for me to mention that the Cannabis Board's Regulation 6.071 already requires safety training. And so I think businesses are already figuring out a way to navigate that and probably have a process in place.
thank you, Chair.
No problem. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about in section, I think at 11, when they are, when the employers are paying for the employees. I understand now, because the employees haven't been trained, that the employers would pay for them to get trained. But after the current employees are all trained, wouldn't it be a condition of employment that you would have an OSHA card, and so then the employer would not pay anymore?
Thank you, Senator Lang. Jessica Ferrato for the record. OSHA cards do not expire. So it's the intention that they they test for OSHA and that they receive that card indefinitely.
Right. But if they're hiring a new employee, couldn't that be a condition of employment that they hold that card, so then the employer would no longer have to pay in the future? Do you see what I'm saying?
Sorry,
if I'm an employee right now, I need to go get under this bill, I need to go get my OSHA card. So once everyone has gotten their OSHA card that's a current employee, and I now pretend I'm a new person, I'm coming in, couldn't it be a condition of employment of hire that you would have your OSHA card, so then the employer would no longer have to pay for them?
Understood. Thank you, Senator Lang. Understood the question now. I think that your line of questioning is an appropriate one. I think it's our intention from the worker's perspective that this is part of the responsibility of the employer to make sure that their sites are safe and that cost would be picked up. There's nothing in the bill that would address that type of provision, right? An employment practice that would then require that of employees. But the intention of the bill is to have the employers require that and hope that the statute would cover it.
Yeah, I think that's something we should look at, because I think that having a continual requirement that employers would have to pay when it would be easy for, when I do an application process, when I was doing operations, I would list all the things you had to have to become employed at my business. So that could be a condition of employment, and therefore it wouldn't rest on the employer in the future.
Senator Lang, was that a question or a comment?
Or a comment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I have just a couple of questions, and my question goes more to how the industry does or is not a part of the parties trying to deconstruct systemic racism. And it goes to demographics. I don't know, Mr. Walker, if you know what the demographics are for the employees. And I ask this question because if there are elements of their employment that would be, I'm trying to capture what Dr. Hardy asked, that would be medically abusive, use that term. What COVID-19 has done is it has exposed the whole healthcare system that BIPOC communities are certainly underserved. So my question would be, if there is a majority of employees who are members of these communities, Black, Indigenous, Brown, and people of color, what is the likelihood that, number one, they might be exposed, and maybe there might be some comorbidities that exist there, and how would that work with workman's comp? And I hope the question is not convoluted.
Matt Walker for the record. Senator Spearman, thank you for the question. I am not going to do a public health or workman's comp attorney impression on this call, but I will follow up with some additional information. I would say that because of your efforts and the efforts of Senator Harris in the previous session, we do have a much better idea of the makeup of the employee pool, and we understand that about half of the employees at cannabis establishments who responded to the Cannabis Compliance Board survey are persons of color or non-white individuals, and so certainly think that it's a diverse pool that represents the diverse makeup of Nevada, and we're proud of that. In terms of the impacts on communities of color for COVID, I certainly recognize that and understand that it takes those systemic conversations across many industries and systems to address those inequities. But again, I'll have to defer to the experts and follow up with some more comprehensive information on this question.
And thank you, Mr. Walker. I wasn't speaking specifically about COVID-19. I just know Vice Chair Neal asked a question about workman's comp, and I don't know what the ratio is for owners to employees. I've got a pretty good understanding that most of the owners are white and most of the employees are non-white. So that would go into my question about workman's comp. There may be some people who are more susceptible, and maybe race or ethnicity doesn't have anything to do with it. Maybe it has to do with their medical makeup. But the question would be, what safety controls are in place to make sure that the workers who are probably members of BIPOC communities and exposed every day versus the owners who may only be exposed periodically who are white, how would that play in workman's comp? You don't have to answer that. That's probably more of a question. More of a statement than a question. But the other thing I'd like to know is, a couple of years ago, we did some things in the legislature to make sure that firefighters and other first responders had an opportunity to do workman's comp after their employment if their health-related issues were a part of that or could be traced back to that employment. Someone works at a dispensary and they leave. A year and a half later, they develop some type of respiratory issue. And the doctor says, where did you work? What did you do? And then the doctor says, oh, okay, so this is probably connected to whatever you did at that site. So is there a way, or have you all looked at a way to make sure that after the employee exits, if there are health complications related to their employment there, that they can still be taken care of and properly compensated?
Matt Walker, for the record, on behalf of the Nevada Dispensary Association. I certainly am not aware of any presumptive eligibility conversations specific to the cannabis industry. I would be happy to survey some of the experts associated with our membership and respond to that. But I think it also highlights the fact that when it comes to supervisor employees that don't necessarily have interaction day to day in the workplace, and when it comes to the fact that there's huge inherent differences between the dispensary retail environment and say a cultivation or production facility, I think that highlights our response to this measure, and that we strongly feel that this could be customized to better reflect the realities on the ground. And I appreciate the opportunity to follow up with you with the additional information.
Thank you. I'll be looking forward towards that. Committee members, are there any other questions? If not, broadcast, we will now go to those in support. And for this segment, there will be 30 minutes, 2 minutes per. And again, would ask those, if someone has already made your point, if you can say ditto, that allows us to get more people in the public comment sector. So we'll go now to support.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support of SB 122, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 451, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits of 451, you have 2 minutes. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You may begin.
My name is Amber Bauer, A-M-B-E-R-B-A-U-R. Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Amber Bauer, Executive Director of the United Food and Commercial Workers Western States Council. UFCW proudly represents over 6,800 members in Nevada, many of whom work in grocery stores, retail establishments, chemical manufacturing, food processing plants, and legal cannabis industry. Our members have been deemed essential workers throughout this pandemic and have risked their lives and their families' lives by going to work every day to serve Nevada while they shelter in place at home. Today, I am testifying on behalf of our cannabis workers in support of SB 122, which requires employees in the cannabis industry to complete a specified health and safety course 1 year after being hired. UFCW members in the legal cannabis industry work in growing and cultivating facilities, retail, manufacturing, and processing facilities, and in laboratories and dispensaries. Wherever cannabis is legalized, the UFCW is committed to building a successful industry with a thriving, diverse, and skilled workforce. We know workers face many health and safety risks in the cannabis industry, including exposure to heat illness, pesticides, and blood-borne pathogens, to repetitive stress injuries and flammable chemical hazards. Unfortunately, there is not much research or data on what makes a cannabis workplace safe, because researchers are still reluctant to study this quasi-legal industry. Additionally, regulating cannabis is unique. Never before in the history of the state has a widespread industry long skilled at operating outside of the law become legal and expected to comply with all laws, including critical workplace health and safety laws that prevent my members and your constituents from falling ill, being injured, or dying. Therefore, it is critical that we ensure workers and supervisors have the training necessary to ensure preventable injuries do not occur in the workplace and to keep workers and consumers safe.
Caller, your 2 minutes
SB
are up.
120 would establish, okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Amber, you can submit the rest of your testimony and we'll make sure that it's part of the record. Thank you, though.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 018. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. My name is Jim Sullivan, JimSullivan, and I'm here representing the Culinary Workers Union, Local 226. We support SB 122 because all workers deserve to work in a safe and healthy environment, and proper training is the key to making this happen. Our health and safety training program has reduced injuries and saved lives in the hospitality industry, and we believe it would have the same positive effect in the cannabis industry. In addition, the pandemic has shown that health and safety training is more important than ever for all workers. We fully support SB 122 and urge you to vote yes. Thank you. Thank you. That was the end of my testimony. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Marquez, do we have anyone else in support?
Yes, we do. Caller with the last 3 digits of 204. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, member of the committee. For the record, Rusty McAllister, Nevada State AFL-CIO. We're calling also today in support of this bill. We believe it is a good policy to improve the worker safety. This industry has, especially in the production and the growth area, has a lot of safety hazards, a lot of safety risk. A good training program could help reduce those incidences where we have problems. Just as give you guys an idea, just the process of I looked online, finding extracting hash oil requires pouring butane over cannabis to extract the hash oil out of the cannabis. Butane is highly flammable, highly explosive. there's been a number of instances across the United States where they have had issues with this process. So a good safety program is not a bad idea at all. Secondly, just as a note, Madam Chair, during the 2019 session, AB 290 was passed. And it was a means by which to track a register or create a registry of trainers and those who have had the program, the OSHA program, in the construction industry. One of the things that's been discovered is that if there's no registry, if there's no tracking of trainers or cards, that people can go down to, say, the Broadacre swap meet on the weekend and buy an OSHA 10 card for the industry, and it was necessary to change that policy before or 2 years ago to address that issue so that they had a better tracking of the cards in the industry to make sure that they weren't getting people getting false cards in the process. So just another note, Madam Chair, that might be something to consider in the form of an amendment. With that, we support this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. McAllister, you feel free to submit your written testimony, and we'll make sure it's a part of the record so that all your points are made. Thank you.
Chair, you have no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. So we will now move to those in opposition. The same time, 30 minutes for this segment.
To testify in opposition of SB 122, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 184, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits of 184, you may begin.
Good morning, Chair Spearman and committee. My name is Matt Walker, MATTWALKER, and I'm testifying in opposition today to Senate Bill 122 on behalf of the Nevada Dispensary Association. I've already had an opportunity to highlight the key differences between the California model and the Nevada model, but just want to highlight those briefly again. California is a federal OSHA plan, and Nevada has a state-administered OSHA plan. And we also have a much tighter regulatory structure with agent cards that are specific to license type and location. Workplace safety is important, and the association has always been discussing proposals that would create a better working environment for the over 10,000 employees in cannabis establishments in the state. But we feel that this policy should be better tailored to Nevada. The Cannabis Compliance Regulations 6.072 already have an extensive list of training that's required for employees before they begin work. And we have highlighted some additional suggestions for the bill sponsor in a letter submitted to Nellis, but just want to highlight a couple of those. One, Section 15 imposes mandatory penalties from the Cannabis Compliance Board that are out of line with any other industry. And again, we've had a chance to extensively talk about how the retail environment just doesn't seem to comply with other industries that have mandated OSHA requirements. Lastly, I'll say that NDA is actively working with Senator Brooks on these issues. We would like to express our thanks to UFCW and the sponsor for meeting with us and having a conversation about potential ways to dial this policy in for Nevada-specific context. And we're confident that with a few more days, we can reach a compromise that will benefit all parties. Thank you.
We are currently in opposition of SB 122. Please press star 9 now to take your cue. Again, please press star 9 now to testify in opposition of SB 122. Chair, you have no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We'll move now to neutral. Same thing, 30 minutes for this segment.
Thank you, Chair. To testify neutral in SB 122, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, we are taking testimony neutral on SB 122. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Thank you. So I got a message that I think Planet 13 had an amendment that they wanted to enter into the record. Senator Brooks, it's always my policy not to accept amendments in the hearing unless the person who is presenting the bill knows about it. So do you know about this amendment? Have you conferred with the folks at Planet 13?
Thank you, Chair Spearman. I have not. I just saw that pop up as well. But I have been working with the Nevada Dispensary Association very closely and with Mr. Walker. And I think that there's some common sense suggestions that they've made in these conversations. And I can imagine that with your permission, I would be submitting a amendment that incorporated some of those suggestions for your review before, if and when and before we were to get to work session of this bill.
Thank you. And if anyone from Planet 13 is listening, I believe your amendment is already on Nellis. And so I would just encourage you to continue talking with Senator Brooks. For those who do not know, it's always my policy never to have an amendment read during the hearing unless the sponsor knows about it. I do that for common courtesy so that the sponsor knows exactly what he or she is facing and they can answer appropriately. So I believe the amendment is in Nellis, and Senator Brooks, you have suggested your suggestion about giving you time, duly noted. You all get together and let me know when you all get to go.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate that.
No problem. Are there any additional questions from committee members? Okay, Senator Pickard, you disappoint me. I thought certainly your hand would be up.
You know, after the tenor of some of the prior meetings, I've thought better and I take them up offline, but I appreciate your concern and your thought. I won't or I won't disappoint you next time.
Oh, please do. Please do disappoint me. Thank you so much. Okay, so with that noted, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 122, and we will open now for public comment.
Thank you, Chair. To speak in public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, your public line is open and working, and no one wishes to speak in public comment at this time.
Okay, we'll give it about another minute and a half just to make sure if they're having technical difficulties, they can still get through. Okay?
Standing by. Thank you, Chair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, seems like we don't have anyone in public comment. So committee members, I thank you so much for your indulgence. For Senator Brooks, thank you. And those either support or in opposition, thank you for a very robust conversation on this bill. And it is my hope that you all will be able to get together and talk this out and please, by all means, let me know when you get to go so we can take this into work session, okay? Thank you. And with that, and no other comments from our committee members, we are now adjourned. Thank you.